I'm officially jaded with the Trump foreign policy. For those of you who've been paying attention to my social media, this is probably not a surprise. I would say it's probably more of a surprise for me than a lot of people. I know that have expressed a lot of dissatisfaction, and that's usually because I like to point out the things that are wrong. That's the kind of guy I am, I guess. My mom used to say that I'm overly critical, but I think that's also part of my nature as a reporter and journalist. Is we look for the things that aren't going well because you point to those things, and with the idea, with the hope that once public acknowledges what is happening, they realize what's going on. The idea of journalism is that they take that information and they pressure for changes that makes things better. I think Trump's done a lot of good things, especially with the border, especially culturally, and even with energy. But the thing about it is, if we end up in a World War III, which would almost certainly have nuclear weapons flying back and forth, I don't know how much of that matters when the whole world is in shambles. And I'll tell you what, the globalists want a world war. They benefited from both World War One and World War Two in the sense that the world became more integrated, more globalist, especially after World War Two. So I want to talk about this. I think this is really important. It's not getting a whole lot of attention. Well, certainly not getting any attention in mainstream reporting, and that's not surprising. But there was an interesting threat from a former Russian president, whatever that means, because it's not like they have fair elections there. But anyway, Dmitry Medvedev, he issued a threat Monday. And this is the first time I've been watching the story, and this is the first of its kind that I've seen. And I want to get into that, but before I do, I want to ask everyone who's watching who is not subscribed to go ahead and subscribe to this channel so you can get notifications when I roll out my videos. I'm going to try to do it a little more um, often. I got some work to do in the studio and whatnot, and of course, I'm working hard rolling out articles, especially for the New American and whatnot. But I want to piggyback a little bit more on some of the stuff that I'm working on. I did a story on this just earlier, and so I want to get out there, but get on top of that. But again, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the Substack. And if you especially enjoy or if you like this video, go ahead and share it. As far as subscriptions go, you can get a free subscription, or if you're feeling extra generous, you can get a paid subscription. I'm working on building this channel, piggybacking off the work that I'm doing on a daily basis. So anyway, let me get back to this story because this is very interesting. So on Monday, Medvedev, he posted on his X account a threat, and it's a not so veiled threat, and it is in response to Trump has now moved the deadline as far as uh, regarding Russian sanctions. He in mid July he Trump said that he would issue sanctions, secondary sanctions against Russia, which would basically be sanctions against countries that buy energy, mostly energy from Russia. And so, energy, petroleum goods, and gas and oil are Russia's main bread and butter. It accounts for like 50% of their GDP or source of revenue. So that's a big deal. Okay. Now, it's hard to tell with the Russians how they really feel about it because when I initially reported on it, they were trying to say on the one hand they're like, oh yeah, it's not going to affect us, we're standing alone anyway, and but then on the other hand they were kind of like there were signs indicating that it would affect them, and they don't very much like it. Well, on Monday when Trump changed the deadline from 50 days, which I guess by then I don't know, by then it was maybe 40 days left or maybe 35. He changed it to 10 days. And Medvedev then issued this statement on X. He said, Trump's playing the ultimatum game with Russia, 50 days or 10. He should remember two things. Interesting. Russia isn't Israel or even Iran. And each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road. Now, the Sleepy Joe road reference is to actually to Trump. He used to make these comments when he was a candidate, and the comments were more or less that the Joe Biden administration's policy, as far as fueling and continuing to support Ukraine, was going to trigger a world war. Now, like the Epstein saga, Trump seems to have flipped here too, and not for the better. Not for the better. So now he's still meddling. He's still in there. And not only that, now we're selling weapons to NATO, who is going to use them to fuel uh, Ukraine's war machine to fight back against Russia. Which, I don't know that I blame Ukraine that much, but I don't have any sympathy for Ukraine. Ukraine is so utterly corrupt. A lot of people are brainwashed into thinking that this is like some sort of war between some sort of like democracy or a wannabe democracy and the big bad Russia. That's not what this is at all. I did a report on this, and let me jot it down here so I can make sure to include it in there. Um, I looked into a lot of the allegations that you hear in some right wing media that Ukraine is a dictatorship and corrupt and whatever. And it's like there's so many sources corroborating essentially all of that. Ukraine, from the moment that war began, the president and his parliament, whatever, they basically, not basically, they did. They implemented martial law. And under that martial law, they did they took all these totalitarian measures. That includes the fact that they banned independent media. They banned all media that had any dissent whatsoever, and they nationalized it. That's a total totalitarian move. That's like totalitarianism 101. And trust me, I was born in a totalitarian country. I lived there 8 years. My father did 2 prison terms trying to escape out of that hellhole. And I have a family member who nearly got killed in a stage accident for his dissent and activism against it. So I don't want to hear this crap that Ukraine and Russia are not the same. They are the same. They absolutely are the same. There's not a hill being a difference between those two countries, because that's what totalitarians do. First of all, again, they banned the media. Secondly, he banned political opposition. He banned like 10 or 11 other political parties, so that there's no dissent. Okay, so the messaging is the same. Okay, and then he arrested, and he has been, they've arrested like several priests. They've clamped down on religious freedom. This is textbook tyranny, and they're still doing this. And they're doing other things. They're nabbing people off the streets and throwing them onto the front lines. They're preventing males or people from leaving the country. This is exactly what the Soviet Union did. It's exactly what my native Romania did. It's a totalitarian country. Ukraine is a totalitarian country. There's nothing libertine about that country. And for us to risk World War II over that is insanely stupid. Absolutely stupid. I don't, I'm tempted to use naughty words. I worked in a shop for a long time, almost 7 years, 7, 8 years when I was young. And so I tend to have a potty mouth sometimes, but I try to control it. But when I think about how insane, how stupid the way that we're conducting foreign policy is, it drives me to that point where I just want to, roll out a steady stream of expletives, because it's just so ridiculous. And what are we doing? We are risking a world war over this. It's like Medvedev. It's like I'm not saying that we should be scared necessarily. I think that sometimes there's confusion between, at least for some, there seems to be some confusion that just because I abhor intervention, that I'm afraid. That's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with that. First of all, I don't think Russia could defeat the United States in a world war. Russia is it's not as big and bad as it tries to portray itself. It never has been. The way that it conducts war is it's sloppy. Its machinery is sloppy. It likes to throw wave and wave and wave of human beings on it. That's always been its thing, and it's the thing that it's still doing now. It throws waves and waves of soldiers and whatnot at it. It's not It's not an efficient war machine, and I don't think it could defeat the United States. I don't. This has nothing to do with that. It's just that I don't think the United States should be involved in this. I don't think that we should risk a world war or any war over this, especially over Ukraine. I don't think we should care. I don't care. And I'm from that part of the country. It's uber corrupt. There's a reason we're here. Okay. And my loyalty is primarily to the United States because this is where I grew up. This is where I'm a citizen of the country. This is a country that has blessed me. And I'll tell you right now, it is not in the United States' interest to continue this. But Trump now is taking on a neocon foreign policy. There seemed to have been some hope, some chance, perhaps there at the beginning, that he was serious um, about trying to pull United States intervention out and trying to end that war. And I know that he hasn't exactly. I believe he has tried to some extent. I also believe he's impatient, but he's messing with. He's trying to deal with a stubborn Russian. And so that's part of the problem. I'm not absolving the Russians out of any of this. I know the Russians are most likely problematic. I know that the Russians are not what they say they are. They don't they're playing all sorts of mind tricks, and so Trump is learning how difficult it is to deal with the Russians. But the thing about it is, if we had nothing to do with this in the first place, we might not even have this war. One thing that is not known commonly in in America, in the West in general, is that there is a high probability that that war began because of Western meddling to begin with. That Maidan revolution was instigated by covert Western operations. And there was an overthrow, there was a revolution, the whole government makeup changed, and all of a sudden now you have a government who's applying, who's very interested in and rattling off declarations and whatnot through their parliament that they want to be part of NATO. Well, Russia already said that's a non-starter. You can't have that. And not to mention, the West had made several promises, from U.S. leaders to French leaders to British leaders, that the West, NATO, would not expand 1 inch eastward past Germany. That ship has long sailed. Many of those ships, like tens of countries, have joined since then. That promise has been broken over and over. And Russia rightfully sees the West and NATO as an enemy alliance, because it is an enemy alliance. It seeks to encircle it and break it up. As Dick Cheney said, I think in the 90s or early 2000s, he said something to this effect, that now that that Russia, the Soviet Union, is gone, we should also dismember, breaking it into the various member states, that being Russia. They don't like Russia. The West does not like Russia, and the reason for that is because the attempt at global governance is led by the Anglo-American network. That's what that's coming from. Now, Russia was at some point, they were open to joining NATO. They were open to being part of the club and whatnot, but the West didn't want them for whatever reason, and that's besides the point. But they realized that not only was the West not going to welcome them, but it was going to continue being aggressive towards them. And so I think that's how this came about. Now, as far as the globalists, they would benefit greatly from a world war. You have to realize these people are sociopaths. They are also very much shielded from whatever effects a world war have. They have their underground bunkers. They have their hamlets in the mountains and whatnot. They have all sorts of ways to eluding the destruction that the rest of us would be faced with. And what would happen afterwards, once that war breaks out, it's going to be pure devastation. The weapons that we have today that are going to be flying around are so much more destructive than what we did to Japan in World War II. And imagine what a world would be like under such devastation. And then they come to the rescue and they say, look, now that we've seen, now that this war has happened and it has destroyed so much, we cannot continue as a world of nation states, because clearly we're going to end up back in this place. What we need is a global governance system so we can prevent a war, another war like this. Also, they will pitch it as a way to bring some sort of stability. They will pitch it as a way to, they'll issue ration cards and food cards and all these things. They're gonna, in that devastation, in those ashes, in that rubble, they will be able to pitch to a vulnerable world population anything they want. That's what they want. They want the world war, and this is what they've been aiming for. And the neocons are pushing Trump into this, and Trump is a freaking idiot because he doesn't see this. Because you know what they do? He's so susceptible to flattery that they could get anything out of him. This is why he attacked Iran. U.S. intel said that there's no reason. We don't see that they're building a bomb. Who said that they were building a bomb? Israeli. And Netanyahu comes and he blows smoke up his ass, and he tells them how great he is and about the righteous power of the mighty righteousness of the United States or whatever. They know how to play this guy, and he's an idiot in this case. He seriously is. He has this weird ego that can be steered by flattery and other forms of I don't know, similar flattery and whatever it is, and deals. He's very transactional. So there's a lot of things he doesn't understand. And so now the neocons have swept in there. They seem to be driving the foreign policy ship, and it's a shame, man. It's a real shame because this could get really bad. This could get really bad. I hope I'm wrong. I'm hope it doesn't lead to that. And again, I'm not, it's like I'm not losing sleep over the fact that the Russians are mad. I don't care about that. What I care about is that this thing could have been over. I care about the fact that, I have family members who are in the military, and I don't want them going into war over this because this is a stupid war. We don't need to have this. And this is antithetical to sorry, there's a fly, to the foreign policy of the founding fathers. The founding fathers would never approve of the foreign policy that we now have. They would never. They would think it's nuts. They warn about this. Read George Washington's farewell address to see what kind of foreign policy he these guys endorsed. They basically said, "Look, let's mind our business." He said Europe has a tendency to be to erupt into all sorts of conflict. He's like, stay out of Europe's dramatic turn of events. Don't let's not poke our nose in there. Also, he said, let's try to get along with every country and do business with every country that will live peaceably and here on our island, which is essentially what it is. I mean, we have ocean between us. We're very well geographically placed. And we don't have any interest in this. These countries do not pose any threat to us. We only have to lose. There are only disadvantages in continuing to fuel this. We need to stop selling weapons to NATO. We need to stop fueling this. We need to get out of there. Let that war play out its natural course, and then let Russia be Russia. The United States needs to pull back its military presence from around the world. It hasn't done any good anywhere. Okay. We have more enemies, not because they love our freedom. We have a lot of enemies because we invade these countries. We impose our democracy and our deranged social values on them. And of course, we wouldn't like it. We wouldn't like it if Iran comes here or whatever, Egypt and all these countries in Europe come over here and they start sending militaries over and putting bases up and then start telling us how to run our cultures and whatnot. We wouldn't like it, so they don't like it. We need to get out of there. We need to get out of this, and someone needs to get Trump's attention because he's supposed to be different, but he's not. He's not being different. When it comes to foreign policy, he is not. And as much good as he's done on other realms, including the border, I think he's done great on the border, and he's done great on cultural issues, and even energy, unleashing energy. As great as he's done on those things, if a world war erupts and everything is decimated, how much of that will that matter? How much will those borders matter? How much will the culture matter when half of the population of the world is decimated and whatever's left is going to be enslaved? That's where this is going. This is not hyperbole. That's where this is going. We have the capacity to blow up this whole world. We have a lot of tension all over the world. And we also have the power to disengage. We have the power to simmer things down, to bring the temperature down, and be benevolent leaders. But we are not acting as so. The people are. But the people need to exert control over their government and insist that we need to stop meddling and foster an environment of peace and not war.